let's kick off. We're a few minutes past 9 o'clock. So welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us in the middle of August to talk about standard interface for content management systems and real-time displays. We're running this event in conjunction with Transport for Wales, and we'll introduce the key people in a minute. This morning we've got a couple of hours in your diaries to do this. We're just going to do some introductions, then we'll have some background to the Transport for Wales procurement, and go through some of the interface requirements and the plans for that. We'll then have a period of Q&A. Inevitably, you're going to have some questions and things like that. And then we'll move into the workshop, where we'll get all interactive in the way that we can when we're doing this remotely on Teams. So let's introduce ourselves in case you don't know. So I'm Tim Rivet. I run Artig on a day-to-day basis. And for those of you that don't know what we do in Artig, we're a member organisation that focuses on helping people within the public transport sector make the best use of transport, encourage the development of standards, and help with creating best practice and sharing that through workshops and events and documents and things like that. And we work with the Department of Transport and European bodies like standards bodies like SEN to encourage things to progress in as standardized and appropriate way that as many people as possible can adopt technology in the public transport area. Leading for Transport for Wales, we've got Kemi. Morning, Kemi.
Hi, good morning. I'm Kemi Adunobin. I'm sorry, I'm the one with the background noise, unfortunately. I work for Transport for Wales, and I'm responsible for what they call bus network reform, which makes me basically a jack of all trades, looking after a range of projects, including this one around data. And I'll be telling you a bit more about our context in Wales shortly.
Yeah. And then we've got Mustafa, who's working with Transport for Wales.
Morning all. I've been working with Kemi looking out for how data is used within Transport for Wales for buses, and I think I've been the one who's been looking at how the interface between the CMS and displays should work. And between myself and Kemi, we approached Tim to look at whether we could get a standard one across the industry.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. So I think to start with, Kemi's going to talk to us about the context of this. So over to you, Kemi.
You're still on mute, Kemi.
Hi, sorry. I'm going to see if I can mimic you, Tim. Here we go. 1, 2.
Excellent. Yes.
Yeah, I can't see it, but but thanks for the tip. Okay, so welcome. This is just me giving you a bit of context of why we're trying to move to this standard interface. Mustafa will give you more of the technical architecture of what we're proposing to do, and really just give you a level of context and also a view about what we want to do with the procurement. So starting off with just the stats about Wales, we have 22 local authorities, and we don't actually have any 5 official regions. We just have 5 regional groupings for those local authorities that help us manage things, at least in a more streamlined way, across that range of organizations. I work for Transport for Wales, which is the organisation that looks after rail and now bus in Wales on behalf of Welsh Government. Of course, Welsh Government sits across all of those organisations. And importantly, we have about 80 bus operators of different sizes working across Wales, noting that we have something called the Big Six, which is who essentially actually run about 80% of the mileage in Wales. A key thing about our current context is that we've entered into contracts with all of the bus operators in Wales for the bus emergency scheme. And that agreement, very importantly, includes access to key financial and operational data, including timetable and real-time feeds. And this gives us a really good opportunity to actually get better information available to passengers across Wales and build that into the future delivery of bus services. To give you a sense of the investment to date, because I thought I could turn up and say, we're running a procurement, you really need to work with us. But I actually just wanted to give you a sense of how much Welsh Government have invested in this space to date. All buses in Wales are fitted with ETMs, and all the big operators paid for the fitting of their ETMs with some compensation from Welsh Government. But the key thing here is that Welsh Government made sure that all bus operators, all the small ones running 5 buses, running 10 buses, are all fitted with ETM. So we have a really rich source of electronic data and, of course, real-time information across Wales. In the pandemic, we also made sure that all of the bus operators, apart from those that couldn't be fitted because they had handhelds, have contactless capability, and the majority have barcode readers in readiness for future multi-operator ticketing. We're also in the process of rolling out tap-off readers to support multi-operator ticketing, but also to support individual operators in rationalizing their fares. So that's the sort of history of investment from Welsh Government in tech for buses. But in addition to that, for the specifics of this meeting, we're looking at about that many bus stops, which is just ridiculous, which is why I've said according to DFT data, and there's no way we're going to be fitting 25,000 bus stops with displays. But I just wanted to give you a sense of the wider scale and the fact that we already have about 600 existing displays. Now, I wasn't sure about leaving this slide in because it's actually a bit of motherhood and apple pie. I'd be surprised if there was any authority that wasn't keen on doing these things. We want to go multimodal. There's a strong focus on accessibility and linked with active travel. We know that information is key to facilitating that travel. And really, our work now is about improving that access to data and the quality of that data that's available to passengers. And finally, the opportunity. We are proposing, it's not decided yet, but we are proposing to go to market later this year for a Welsh bus data service, which is not in its essence dissimilar to BODs in England, but is more likely to have a more operational element because Transport for Wales includes Travelline, whereas Travelline is moving into Transport for Wales. So we will need to be actively delivering journey planning information to passengers. So we are looking to procure a Welsh bus data service with a real-time information engine. We are looking separately at the moment to procure a central content management system. And the driver behind that is even though we have 22 local authorities, you'll have seen from the scale, I hope, of one of the things I put on the other slides, we only have 1,800 buses across all of Wales. So we're really talking about a wide geographic spread, but potential to actually better consolidate our operational management of actually not operational management because we don't operationally manage all bus services, but consolidate our ability to message and provide information to passengers across displays all over Wales. And so we're really looking to, and that's one of the key drivers for wanting to have a central content management system. The other key driver for wanting to have that central system is the fact that we want local authorities to be able to select displays from a framework and not to have to be tied to a particular supplier for their specific geographic area. So if we're able to facilitate that standard interface between a central content management system and any display on the framework, then we feel that we would have ended up with a solution that gives local authorities the flexibility to procure what's best for the various locations in their area. So fundamentally, today's engagement is to see whether there is we can build a consensus on developing that on standard interfacing. We would want to make that a condition of our procurement, that basically anybody who ends up on the display framework would be able to comply with that standard interface. But we also would like to make that something that other authorities could use as well, to make it worthwhile both for local authorities across the UK and for suppliers to get involved in developing the interface. So that's the context from me, and I'm sure if you have any questions, I can pick those up when we get to the Q&A session.
Yeah, thank you, Kemi. Mustafa is going to give us some more of the technical background to what they're looking to achieve, I understand. So,
yeah, thank you. Give me 1 second. I'm going to put up a diagram. Okay, so hopefully my head isn't in the way of some of this. If it is, please shout Tim or Kemi, and I'll just present as normal rather than with my picture in it. No?
It's not covering anything critical.
Okay, good. So this is an overarching component diagram of the various components being procured by a proposed to be procured by a TFW over the coming year. As you'll see, there's the 3 main components that Kemi's already mentioned: the bus data service, which takes a number of data sources from external services, so incidents, events, weather, traffic, etc. Does a number of other, it incorporates a number of other data inputs, such as real-time information, static data, reference data, and then spits that out through a data gateway for use by the CMS. The CMS also has access to external data feeds, so localized news feeds, for example, which it uses to then pass on to displays. The CMS itself is really there to understand each display, recognize the characteristics in terms of size, areas of displays, whether that can take RTI information, messages, advertising, etc. Obviously, for the basic text-based displays, apart from the RTI information, it won't allow anything else to be put in, and all of that is through a management portal. Then the displays themselves, we've got a range of different types of displays. We've got basic text displays, upgraded displays, and most likely there'll be text-based ones, but there is potential to upgrade other types of displays. New graphical displays and low power displays, or what we've termed as part of this work, off-grid. So typically no power and no connectivity without using 3G SIMs or 4G or 5G in the future. And one key element of that interface between the CMS and display boards is the fault management system, and making sure we understand which displays are live, whether they're working, when they conk out, what should happen, and get them resolved as quickly as possible. So that's the overarching components and the core links, the ones in red there. Unless anyone's got any questions, we can move on to the next section.
Okay, so any questions from anybody at this point? Okay, so one question that I was expecting somebody to ask was, what are the timescales that are being planned for this?
Okay, so the intention is to go to procurement later this year. So the intention would be to get the supplier, the potential bidders for the CMS, not potential, the actual bidders for the CMS and the actual bidders for the display framework to interact during the procurement process, such that we can finalize the interface spec for, I guess, for contract signature early next year at the latest, January, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Excellent, thank you. Has nobody got any questions? Aha. Darren, yes.
Apologies if you can hear background noise, because very much like Kemi, I have work going on in the house. There is literally someone replacing a roof above my head at the moment. So just very quickly, so you say agree a spec for ready for contract signature. How soon after contract signature are you expecting suppliers to have delivered the new spec? So a CMS that can hand out data in the fashion you want, and obviously displays that can accept it. Sorry, Kemi, you're on.
Ideally within 3 to 6 months.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've got a question. Dave Mountain, Transport API. I was tempted to ask Darren where he managed to get a builder. They're like gold dust, but I'll let that one go. When will more information be released about the technical spec of what's expected from the CMS and the displays? Like, when can we expect a bit more detail that we can dive into? What's the timescale for that?
Well, in some ways, we're looking to you to help us with developing the detail around the interface, around the CMS. It's not going to be anything you've not seen before about requirements for a CMS. It's just the fact that we're looking to have a single one as opposed to having multiple.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's useful.
And to add to that, the discussion today, we are going through the areas that we're interested in that need to be incorporated into a standard. So things like fault management, the different types of displays and how we interface with each of those different types, the data content each of those will need to be able to support. So that will effectively drive what we're after, which will then be incorporated into our specifications.
That's great, thank you.
Hi, Nigel Hewson. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, can you hear me?
Yes, Michael.
Yeah, thank you. Basically, one of the things that has always slightly confused me about the way the final connection between a provider's server and the actual sign has never been sort of, as far as I'm aware, sort of really laid down as one particular standard. I know they're supposed to use a sort of industry type of standard, but I'm not fully aware that is the case, because we've never really pushed any of our providers to say, are you using a particular standard? I have the feeling that you might come across quite a variance of any standards that are there, which might be a fairly big thing to circumnavigate or get round or solve problems to, which that's the, I might be wrong. I'm just a bit concerned about how long that would take, because we would like to do the same, obviously, because it just saves so much bother. So yeah, that's my view at the moment, anyway.
Yeah. Okay, Nigel, and then Kemi.
Hi, Nigel Hewson from Infotech. Two questions really. One, how do we make sure we're invited to bid for the frameworks? And the second one would be, do you require any displays to be bilingual?
How you find out to be invited to the framework would be normal. I was going to say OJU, but to be honest, I don't know what the new name for the new procurement body would be. But ultimately, it would be advertised, and I'd be very happy to send something back out through Arctic when we come to the point of advertising procurement. So that wouldn't be an issue at all. Your second question, I scribbled DN, and that doesn't mean anything. So if you don't mind repeating it.
Oh, sorry. Do you require the displays when you're doing the text, etc., to be bilingual?
Yes. Yes.
English and Welsh.
The short answer is yes. Absolutely. Okay. The answer was yes straight away. Sorry, and I almost discounted that. So yes, absolutely, we want them to be bilingual. Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, that's what we did for the railways, so that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kemi, I don't think you actually have a choice, do you, under the Welsh Language Act? I think it legally has to be dual language. So
Yes. I was embarrassed about forgetting the question, but it's almost as if I processed it and forgotten that it was even a question. But yes, absolutely, it is required. So I had a question, but I'll get Darren come back first. Darren?
Hello, sorry, I was on mute. Obviously there's a range of as Mustafa quite rightly pointed out, there's a range of technology types with the displays. So are you viewing this standard very much in the way being formed similar to Siri, where you would have core functionality within the standard and then extensions that would be able to support the different technology types?
Yes, effectively, yeah. So we're so the bare minimum, and so again, when you look at Neural, you'll see there's the minimum capability which we're expecting all displays, and then extensions for additional displays.
Okay.
Or types of displays.
Perfect. Thank you, Mustafa. And in answer to the builder question, I booked them 2 years ago. So
I didn't book anybody. These people just turned up across the road and started felling a tree. So I had a couple of questions. One was around how many other authorities were on this call. If I just get a sense of the mix of authorities and suppliers. And then the second was a really basic one: is are we mad to be trying this? And that's it, really.
So we'll do introductions in a bit when we start the workshop, so we can get an idea of how many actually are on the call from different sectors out of the 26. But in the ones that are booked, probably about a third were authorities.
And are we mad to be doing this? Because we're going to get into the more detailed conversation, but if fundamentally you think this is not really a goer, it would be helpful to know that early. Hello, Darren.
Sorry, I will let someone else speak at some point. I think possibly ambitious with your timescales is my given the work that's gone into Siri over the years and standardization of that format.
Okay, thank you. And it's that level of honesty we're going to need through this process. Otherwise, we'll end up in the wrong place or with an ambition that's not realizable.
Any other thoughts, Steve?
Yeah, hi, good morning. Maybe we'll come to this in the workshops in the more detailed sections, but I guess I wonder whether either Kemi or Mustafa could just go. You mentioned there was a fault management section, and obviously there's going to be maintenance required on the hardware. Can you give a bit more of a brief on how you see that working? Because I think potentially one of the pitfalls with this, and I think this could work. I think it's certainly a way forward. One of the pitfalls will be you'll have multiple suppliers on your almost your lot 3 sort of framework for the hardware, and therefore multiple suppliers doing the maintenance, and there's going to have to be some, I guess, some government in terms of the quality of that maintenance, the regularity of that maintenance. So I guess, yeah, I don't know whether you could give a bit more on that or whether that will come in a wee bit.
Do you want to go, Mustafa?
Yeah, no problem. So there's 2 parts to this. One is on the display framework providers themselves. There'll be a requirement for them to maintain displays and deal with faults as they arise. And what I'm envisaging at this moment is all displays will send some fault data to the centralized CMS. And that will be at a minimum a heartbeat, just to just so the CMS knows everything's still up and running. But if possible, additional information like a section of the display's gone down, temperature's too high, someone vandalized it, etc. And this on the CMS side, the CMS would also have a fault management system, which hopefully you saw on the diagram, which monitors every display and highlights those issues both to the designated contact within a local authority, but also back to the display provider. So when something goes wrong, the CMS automatically sends an alert, says there's a problem, here's the details, and all the management in terms of updates to the fault itself, when it's been rectified or additional information that's been added, will be through the central system.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Nigel.
Yeah, I got one. On the number of displays that you're planning to roll out, and over what period?
And the answer is I don't know. That's the short answer. The longer answer is that we're in the process of resurveying the local authorities to get a view on what percentage of their bus stop, what percentage of their interchanges and other locations they would want to roll out displays to. And we would use that to set, one, the numbers for the framework, but also the ask in budget terms to Welsh Government.
Okay.
I mean, so that's specific to our procurement, but obviously, if we've got a good number of local authorities on this call or interested in this, clearly the interface itself is going to serve a wide purpose for the whole industry, not just TFW.
Yeah, there are a number of authorities and consortiums of authorities that I'm aware of, some of whom are on this call, some of whom aren't, that have either thought about this in the past or are thinking about it at the moment for upcoming procurements, and have felt that the time wasn't right or it was too difficult for them to achieve as an authority. The Welsh Government and Transport for Wales, being a national body, is being bold and brave in coming forward with this, and hopefully it might crystallise a few more people to say yes, this is something that we might use, or no, actually it's not, and that's what we're trying to flush out at this point to work out whether it's feasible or not, and whether there's where there is appetite both from a public sector purchasing type side of things or actually the supplier side of things as well.
I was going to say, one of the challenges we have with procurement is we normally say we get to a position where we say we have a fixed spec and we sign up to it and it must be delivered within, as I said, 3 to 6 months. The reality of this process could be that we use our procurement and our framework as almost like a test bed for this interface, and use it to actually get to a position where we're all comfortable that it's deliverable and is working, and then could be rolled out more widely as a standard. So we're trying to, I think the reason we approached Tim was we could have managed the collaboration simply between the bidders for our 2 lots, but we thought that we ought to broaden that conversation to include people who might not initially end up on our framework. So I wouldn't make this a once and done. I think it's something we could evolve.
Okay, thank you. Well, just one final question as well. You mentioned obviously displays for various bus stops, etc. Is the framework likely to include on vehicle or on bus displays?
We talked about that actually, and I don't see why not, particularly when you're looking at multimodal and you want to be able to inform people of what their connections are. Then on bus makes perfect sense.
Okay, thank you.
Keith.
You said you had about 600 displays out there currently. I'm just interested in what your plan was for migration them across to the new system and who would be responsible for the hardware of that. And also, I think you kind of answered this one, but I don't know how the railway works, for instance, and how those data is given and driven. But would you be looking to potentially use the same CMS across the railway and the bus at a future date, should it be successful? That was it, really.
Okay, the first one in terms of migration would be, we would need to make, as every authority would need to make an assessment about whether it was worth the effort of migration or whether it was better to replace. And that will be some of the feedback we'll be getting from the local authorities around the age of their current kit. And where we are going to keep displays, then part of this process will be how do we provide an interface to existing systems. And so again, the data we're collecting is what's the information, you know, what are the systems that local authorities have procured to date. So I think that's how I would answer the migration question. And on the rail and bus thing, I'm sure you know that there's always this, rail always feels like the big brother in our world, and I guess, and so we'll come to a place where we see whether, yes, we can deliver something that's useful here, and we know that our colleagues on the rail side in TFW are interested. The question is whether this is something they would move to, but you know, we're in the same organization and can have that conversation.
And related to that existing display infrastructure is, you know, is there something that we can do as part of this work which looks at how maybe those existing displays could be migrated across? So use of universal sign drivers, single board computers, so all of those which will then use the interface spec itself, but the method is a separate bit. But it's something to explore, maybe not for today.
Yeah. Okay. Final call for questions before we move into the workshop part. No. Okay. There is plenty of opportunity in the rest of the morning to come up with more questions, and feel free to raise them, because that's the whole point of a workshop, and we'll go through how we're going to run that now. So we oh, let me just get me screens. Things have disappeared. So we're now going to go interactive. If we're all face to face, this is the point where we'd get out flip charts and whiteboards and post-it notes and things like that. That's a bit hard when we're all in different places. So we're going to use a tool called Mural. And so what we're going to do during the interactive bits is we're going to ask you to put your post-it notes on with your thoughts and ideas and questions. And then we'll give you a bit of time to do that. And then we'll look at what everybody's put and try and get some common themes and clarify what people have put, and that'll help us work forward in this process of identifying the feasibility and the work that would need to happen to create the display interfaces that we're going to talk about today. To get you used to using Mural and also to introduce ourselves, we're going to create some post-it notes with our names and details on. We're going to move to the Who Are You bit. So this is the introductions bit. If 20 odd of us did introductions, we'd be here for the next 20 minutes, half an hour, and we haven't got that long. So this is a way of introducing ourselves. We can see who's here, and so going to ask you to put your name, who you're from, and your favorite type of electronic display. It's always good to have an icebreaker, and who knows what's going to come out. So for example, you know, my favorite type of electronic display is a flip dot. I think they're really cool. Might be old school, but very low power and work very well. So we'll just give you a few minutes to create your Who Are You box. Thank you for introducing yourselves. The first thing that I'd like to do at the moment, and we'll come back to this at the end as well, is So if we create these standard interfaces, who would buy, and I should probably have added use this interface. So if you could have a think about who might buy it, different people, and who might use it, who might find this useful, because that will help potentially shape some of the things that we want to talk about next. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to have a think about that. I'm going to start a timer, and you'll get a bing bong at the end of the time. Excellent. So that bing bong says that that we've been looking at this for 5 minutes. So let's just have a look and see what people have been putting in. Oh, excuse my wolves in the background. So we've got local authorities and transport authorities, and transport executives and local authorities. So I guess those are the sort of people that we might have expected. There's some really interesting things though about other public realms, so hospitals and universities, and real estate. That's really interesting, and good ideas. Rail, yes, we've touched on that one already, and public transport operums. So whoever put that up, are you thinking about operator control rooms or something else?
I was thinking of a London style ops room, basically across different modes.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So there's a really good point down here about data protocols and the need to make sure they don't stagnate and that they can change with the times and adapt. That's good point. Okay, so we'll come back to this once we've been through the rest of it, just to make sure that that we haven't, people haven't identified anybody else that might be interested in this. This is really useful stuff and helpful because it helps us identify who we might need to get involved in the next stage of any work that comes out of this, and the sort of peoples that we might need to talk to market any and encourage the use of any standards. So this is really good.
Could I ask about real estate, the real estate one?
Yeah.
How does that, who wrote that and what sort of thing were you thinking of?
So that was Mike.
Yeah, so hi Kemi and Tim. Yeah, I mean, around the world, I mean, certainly in the US, you see quite a lot of big sort of real estate companies putting screens up in either sort of accommodation blocks or where you've got some mixed office and accommodation in big city centres. Partly to encourage people who pass through those buildings to understand what local transport options there are that are very local to that particular location. So it was really within that context I was thinking about it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so we're now going to look at some of the meat of what we might want to do, and as Mustafa introduced, there are 3 types of displays that we see or groupings of displays. One is basic text-based displays, so typically LED, very simple displays with limited sort of information that they can show because they are text-based. So it'll be things like real-time information and arrival, timetable times, text-based messages. You'll have all seen displays like this on street. Then you've got graphical displays. So these are, you might initially think of things like TFTs and plasma type displays. They've got more capabilities than the text-based displays. They can put graphics up there. You could put news feeds up there. You could use it for advertising and even video type content. Within this, when we were talking before, there's an interesting sort of where do some of the higher dot pitch LED displays fit between these two. So on the rail network, you might have seen some of the high dot pitch LEDs being rolled out where they can show sort of iconography and simple graphics, but they're not to the resolution of TFT and things like that. So that's an area where perhaps we might want to get into a discussion. And then we've got off-grid displays, so battery powered, solar powered, those sort of displays, and the displays that might be in a really rural area with really patchy, flaky comms. And so what might we be able to do with those? And so the concept being that as I think Darren asked earlier, you start off with the minimum capabilities of a basic text display, and then you can build on top of that for the graphical displays. And again, you might then build on a basic text display for a low power, but actually they may be a really different beast. So to start with, the first one question that we want to pose is, for each of these three different types, what might be the minimum capability from a standard interface? We're already seeing things like journey number and service number and destination and things like that. What are the basic things that you might see or expect to see in a standard interface that are going to work with pretty much every type, every display of these three types? So I'm just going to give us a few minutes on the clock to have a think about this and put some stuff up. Okay, excellent. So let's have a look and see what we've got on here. So for basic text displays, RTI, disruption, messages and time, service number, destination, via destinations, system current time, and various types of messages. Schedule, look ahead for fallback. Yeah, I think that's interesting. Service number and destination, standard information. Yeah. Okay, so really interesting one here is feature discovery. What type am I? So Dan, can you talk us through your thinking on that a little bit?
Hi there. Yeah, I'm not sure that belongs 100% there, but I mean, with any of these displays, you'd want to know sort of certain attributes of that display, have a way of communicating them. It could be sort of physical attributes, could be the number of characters on the display, number of lines, or it could be what features that display supports. So it's just a method really of discovering that as part of the interface.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I think that's really helpful for bringing that up. It's something I was thinking about and spoke to Tim before this meeting about, is there a mechanism for the displays to tell the CMS what the characteristics of that display are, to help set up initially and then manage it going forward. I'm glad you brought it up. I'm not sure where it fits in the scheme of the areas we've asked for, but
yeah, it doesn't quite fit.
Yeah, I'd like to pin that for a future discussion.
All right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So if we then move on more to the right for graphical displays, we've got RSS data, advertising, and I guess some of these there wasn't a lot of space in these boxes. I realized that was a risk, and I think that's come to fruition because there's some overlap and challenges here, but operator logo, public information. Yeah, I think this is a really interesting one. The whole public information, the COVID stuff, and things like that. That's come to the fore over the last sort of 18 months. How do you get some of these, not specifically public transport messages out there that are, public health and public information stuff? So that's a really good point. Yeah, low floor access and the features and functions of a vehicle. Some people do that, I think, on LED displays. I think I've seen somewhere as well, but that is more normal on TFT. Via information, yeah. So there's some exposure window. Who's been putting these on? Mr. Muntus, what do you mean by exposure window and geofence? Michael?
I'm here. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was muted. Basically, text has got to have a lifespan, and it's also got to have a visibility span. So I still think that's a basic requirement. But what we want to be say, when does this actually want to be shown? But for other systems that might need to use that data, they might need to have a life of actual existence. And then the geofence is that sort of information you could say where this message is displayed, rather than just saying it's got to go to this side, it's got to go to that side, it's got to go to that side. Is there a way where we could say this is in this area where we want to put it up, so you have different route failures and things like that? You want to put messages in that respect. Does that make sense?
Right. Yes, that does. Yeah.
I couldn't think of a better word. Sorry.
Yeah, no. So you then leave it up to the display to decide whether to show that based on where it knows it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That sounds neat.
Yeah, effective publish and subscribe model, isn't it? Which is an interesting concept for displays. It does mean the displays have to have a bit more power rather than just receive. It needs to work out what it needs to show. Can I just check one thing I put on my one, and wasn't sure if this is an industry concept or not. The use of the word slides. Is it any display providers are on here? Do you know what that means?
Where was that, Mustafa?
So on my blue box where it says RSS data, and then at the bottom it says slides.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. Do the display providers, do they know what that means?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can
Yeah,
now.
we can. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we understand exactly what you mean by that. That's and obviously it depends on the technology.
Yeah, for graphical typically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So then in low power or off grid, same as LED and TFT, more server to server communication. Low power displays, not be able to run standard protocols. Yeah, so we had a discussion about this, particularly up front before this session, because for these off-grid, this may be one where you need to have a display-specific CMS between the main CMS and the display to help manage that transfer of data to maintain the power consumption. So that's something that we'd already sort of talked about and thought might be where we needed to end up. Printed timetable information, yeah. From a presentation perspective, next of each service and not X of the same service. Yeah. And emergency, yeah. Broadcast capability, yeah. Across all displays, yeah. And across all display types, yeah. No, that's good. That's good. Excellent. Has anybody got any questions about anything that anybody's put up on there? There's some really good stuff there.
I think just one thing to make that explicitly clear. It seems an implicit assumption that there'll be no interaction with these screens. The screens themselves will be making decisions about what to show, and there'll be no interaction with any end users that will allow them to drill down or anything like that. I think it's implicit. I just want to make it, explicit.
Yes, that's fair. So yes, we were thinking that these are, they're not totems or kiosk type functionality fundamentally, although you might use this to provide a kiosk with departure information or something like that. But yes, in terms of, somebody asks for something and it brings it back, not an interactive interface. Yeah.
So Tim's point about you might make use of this is very pertinent. So interactive displays where they provide RTI, scheduled data, all this other information, it will be available, but the user won't be able to interact with it. They may be able to interact with other parts of the screen to do wayfinding, look up maps, etc. But the RTI information will just be a box, essentially. They won't be able to say, oh, well, I want to look at a different bus.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so that's looked at the minimum capabilities. One of the other things that is important that was touched on is fault monitoring, knowing whether something's working or not. So if we can now spend a little bit of time looking at and thinking about fault monitoring, what would be possible in a standardized interface for each of these different types of displays. So that might be, a heartbeat so that you know whether it's responding or not. It might be, actually we've lost some LEDs or something's overheating. What might be possible for each of these. Excellent. And the stewardess will be with you shortly. Always reminds me of that ping. So, okay, thank you. So fault monitoring capabilities. Well, there's a lot more in here than I thought we might end up with, as people thinking what would be possible. So yeah, heartbeat and temperature, displaying capability failure, whether scheduled data downloaded, fault messages, audio availability, and audio announcements crops up a couple of times. Is that where you would have a button or a fob or something speaking what was on the display and whether that functionality was working or not? Is that what people are thinking?
That's certainly what I was thinking, Tim. When someone makes use of that through a key fob, Bluetooth, button on the display, whatever it is, recording the amount of usage of that functionality.
Yeah, and I guess therefore, whether it's working or not, I guess if you know that gets used 3 times a week and you've not had any use for a little bit, then yeah, you might assume that it's not working anymore. Okay, then yeah, email notifications and alarms. So yeah, the CMS will be able to do that. An interesting one, network speed. So that could be really important if you're trying to push graphics out to something or video even. Yeah. Shock sensor data, screen brightness data. Yeah. True mimics. Tim, what do you mean by true mimic?
No, sorry, I think it's Nigel. I put it up. It's quite often a lot of the CMS systems, you can get a mimic of the data that's been sent to the display, but you're not actually seeing what's on the display. Whereas with a true mimic, you can actually delve into the display and see what's actually being shown.
Okay. Yeah. Rather than the theoretical.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just check on that one? Do you mean actually effectively getting whatever's on the display and showing it from the CMS? Because that could be quite bandwidth heavy.
I do mean that, and it's not.
Okay.
You can actually, it's something we do all the time, but it's quite often a lot of the CMSs we see just show you what the data they've sent, whereas you can delve into the displays and actually see what information is being displayed on it.
Yeah. Okay. And then when we get towards the off-grid, basic text and comms failure, when backup power availability and battery status, battery health. Yeah. Okay. And then this group at the end looks like it's probably more general stuff, Mark, am I right, rather than specifically about off-grid?
You're right, it's for the general, for all signs, more the interface, if you like, not geared towards any specific display, but the maintenance of the fault itself.
Yeah, okay, excellent. There's some really good points there. Okay.
Tim, sorry to interrupt. I'm having problems with my connection, so I keep being kicked out. I was doing a post-it. I wanted to mention regarding faults, a login system that allows the general public to report the faults. because
Okay, yeah.
at Essex we found very reliable the public notices. But I couldn't. Sorry, I couldn't. I thought I put the post-it, but it didn't go there.
No, it's a good point, because whatever you do, try and do automatically and digitally. If somebody's sprayed a display with black spray paint over the front of it, you're probably not going to detect it. So yeah, you need eyes on the ground for that sort of thing. So yeah, okay. Michael Muntus.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, I just wondered what was the financial impacts tracking? I probably missed something here.
So down here, yeah.
Yeah.
Hi there. This is something we do in our fault management system, where if a fault is raised and you assign a crew to go and maintain it, and you find there's a component that needs replacing, or in the very act of the maintenance crew going out, there is a financial implication.
Right, I see. Yeah, yeah.
So you can come back and say in future, you can run off reports to say, you know, this type of fault typically costs X amount, and we have X number of these a year, so budgets can be considered here.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Cheers.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Okay. Excellent. So next, we wanted to look at what sensors might be able to add into this standardized interface. Mustafa, is there anything you want to add?
Sorry, I can't hear what you're saying, Tim. Something really wet. No, it stopped. Do you want to say that again, Tim? I think you said my name.
Yes, yeah. Is there anything you want to add into this additional sensors?
Yeah, so I think this one is a little bit around, you know, what kind of additional sensors are out there on displays and how can you get access to that data. So we know about temperature sensors. I mentioned shock sensors in the reporting one, but is there other things? So CCTV, you know, monitoring, IR monitoring, turning the screen off when there's no one around, that kind of thing, and passing that information back to the CMS. Yeah, it looks like some of you have already started putting those in. So yeah, I think they understood exactly what I was after.
Yeah, cool, excellent. Okay, thank you. There looks to be some really interesting stuff here. There's a few passenger occupancy notes here. People thinking about on vehicle or at the bus stop occupancy. So sensing people, how many people are queuing.
The latter, yeah.
Okay. Does anybody have any that actually exist that will do that? Question for the suppliers out there. Has anybody got anything that will actually count people?
Aren't there things on buses sort of give an idea of how many people are actually on a bus, right? Or tracking buses by looking at the Bluetooth signal?
Yeah, there's all sorts of ways of doing it on bus. So it was
yeah, sort of translating that to the stop.
Yeah, at the stop. Mark.
Hi there. For displays we've supplied with built-in CCTV, we do count the number of people outside hanging around in a bus stop area. So we have whether it's passenger count, yeah, you're never quite sure, but it's number of people. Certainly we track how many people continue to hang around versus how many have just walked through. But it's early days into it, and we've been trialing it out for 3 months, and it's been fairly good, but yes, it's the start of it.
Yeah. No, interesting. Okay. Yeah, there's a few motion sensors to wake up, low power, and presence detection, and air quality. Yeah, I can see that becoming more of a priority over the coming years. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Any questions from anybody on the sensors? There's a good wide range of things there. Okay. Next, and we'll tackle both of these together, I think, is error handling and problems. So, you know, what might an interface be able to cope with in terms of managing comms failures or power failures and things like that, and how might an interface be able to manage data and information quality. So things like you know, making sure the display clears down. What happens, you know, if comms is lost? At what point does it clear down and that sort of thing? So if we could tackle both of these linked together, that would be great. Okay, excellent. So there's some interesting things appearing. Some of them I suspect could usefully be put into display specifications as well as interface requirements. So watchdogs to restart displays in connection failures and things like that, and battery backup and things like that. Some really good ideas here. Yeah, some that we'd seen earlier in the minimum capability. So messages start and end dates, which will help. Yeah. And then management of data feeds and caching of data. Yeah. Interesting how quite a lot of these, I think we probably want to pick up in the display framework, an interesting linkage between the interface and the display capabilities themselves. And then for data quality, clear downs on displays could be problematical. Yeah. Time sync between displays and servers. Yeah, that's a really good point. Data sent upon change to minimize bandwidth. Yeah. Displays knows what it wants, goes and gets it, and publish subscribe model. Yeah, that's something widely used in system to system. It would be really good to get that into the interface as well. Yeah. Okay. And clear down acknowledgement. Yeah, there's a few things to do with clear down that are excellent. That's really good. And so we've looked at the areas of what we could do in an interface. So we've looked at what are the minimum capabilities, what can we do about faults, and what additional sensors out there, how we handle data quality, and handling errors. One of the questions that Kemi posed at the start was, how could we apply this to existing displays? And I'm sure that there's very long, in-depth answers that people could give for their own particular systems and things like that. But just to get an idea about whether that's actually something that we would want to pursue or not, just going to do something slightly different. We're going to have a voting session. So we're going to vote to get some idea about how easy and hard we think it would be to apply a standardized interface to the 3 different types of displays. So you see easy, difficult, and impossible against each one of them. I'm just going to set up a voting session, and I'm going to let you have 3 votes, so 1 for each type of display, and so you can vote by clicking on the easy, difficult, or impossible boxes. If you vote on the wrong one, if you hold the shift key down, and then you can untick your vote and you will get it back. So you've all got 3 votes, and we'll let this run for a few minutes. So basically, how difficult do you think it would be to apply a standardized interface to the different types of existing displays?
Nigel's put his hand up.
Ah, yeah, Nigel.
Hi, Tim. On the when you say existing displays, you're talking about the 600 odd that are already installed out there.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, because obviously it depends whether they're open protocols or open application displays, etc.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But in your experience, how easy would it be?
I don't think we should apply it to the 600. I think it should be more generic. The basic LED type screens, would they be difficult, easy, possible, rather than our 600, because you don't know what our 600 are.
I mean, as a display manufacturer, we could supply displays that would allow these to future displays to be easy.
Yeah.
Yes. But on existing displays, as the question asked, it's you don't know what the manufacturers are, what the protocols are. And some of them
you're going to have to base it on what you've already got, or for those who don't provide displays, what your thoughts are, general thoughts.
Okay.
I didn't vote because I would just say easy, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did vote, and I did say easy. I haven't put impossible on any of them though.
Justin's got his hand up, Tim.
Okay,
Yeah.
Justin.
Just to say that I've voted, but one of the things it will depend on how complex any kind of interface is. So if you're just talking about real-time information, it might be easy. But if you're talking about kind of having a standard to manage what images, etc., go on to that screen, it might be more difficult for suppliers.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Just to get some idea. Okay, so there's only a couple of people left. Most of you have voted. So if we end that, so excellent. So for text-based displays, the general consensus, there's more easy than difficult. So yeah, that sort of is the sort of direction that I thought we might end up. But interestingly, for graphical displays, there's a bit more of an even split, but more thinking it's more difficult. Again, for the reasons Justin just outlined, depends on quite what you want to achieve. That's interesting. And then off-grid displays, there's a few impossibles, and it certainly feels like that's going to be more difficult to achieve. So that's really useful, and helps set some expectations and plans. So yeah,
Yes.
excellent.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's really useful. Okay, so now we've been through all of that, and you understand a bit more about what trying to achieve. A couple of minutes on where are you aware of this having been done anywhere else, either directly yourselves, or you've seen an article where somebody's suggested it's been done? Plagiarism is always useful if we can go and look and see and talk to people that have done this sort of thing before. It'd be really useful to know. Things have slowed down a little bit, so you can of course carry on if you're still thinking about putting something in here. At this point, I'm going to jump us back to something we looked at right at the start. So who would buy interfaces like this? Who would use them? In light of what we've discussed and what we've thought about, a couple of minutes to think about whether there's anything extra that any other people that, in light of the conversations, we might add into this list.
Tim, Rob's got his hand up.
Aha. Oh yes, thank you, Rob.
Hello there. How are you doing?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, thank you for this meeting. It's quite fascinating to see the different viewpoints. I appreciate that we're just talking about the CMS, and that's a specific subject that we're looking at. But something that's crossed my mind is each kind of level of achievement we look at reaching through a CMS. I think as one contributor mentioned earlier, there's a level of financial implication. Just to put it simply, that the more monitors you have in a display, what that then filters down to is, number one, a maintenance issue. There's more things to fix that go wrong. Number two, a monitoring issue. There's more things to watch and monitor and check for and then respond to if there's more sensors. And then thirdly, of course, to build those additional sensors, etc., into the monitor will push the price of the display up. So it's somewhere in the discussion, even though we're not talking about the physics of the displays, I think it is possibly wise to boil it down, not just saying to the bare minimum, because lots of these things have a place, but some units could be viewed as add-ons at a later stage to the CMS rather than being a core value. Because if you get the world's best CMS, are you then tying in all the authorities to have to buy the top quality displays that are all needed to run the CMS? Or could you just have a basic, gives you your RTI and that's it, with the odd kind of heartbeat? And then if you want to buy the additional bits, you can do. Because I mean, certainly for us, local authority, it's all about, can we afford it now, but can we afford it in 5 years? Can we afford it in 10 years? And the maintenance package to care for these displays will just go up and up and up if they're driving a very complex CMS.
Yeah. No, you're right, Rob.
Yeah.
You're right. It's good.
Though my question would be whether you have the capability in the CMS, but you make the choice about what displays you buy. Really, I don't think the CMS dictates the complexity of the displays. But I very much take your point that you don't want to end up in a space where you're specifying a standard multiple sensors on all displays.
Yeah. So Kemi's point there, from a CMS point of view, typically it's an IT system, and whilst it may be able to take lots of different types of data, unless you're pumping that data in, it's just a question of scale. If you pump temperature as well as CCTV as well as other stuff, that database suddenly gets very big. But it's all still just a case of receiving that data. But from a display point of view, the more stuff you add, the more cost you bring in. So if you want CCTV, well, that's an extra camera module, plus extra bandwidth, plus etc. from a CMS point of view, you know, I think Kemi's right. We're not. It's not really a question of is that going to bring lots of additional cost, and whichever way around we look at it, from the point of view of an interface spec, the interface spec needs to be able to handle a plethora of different data going back and forth, whether some of that is taken up by some suppliers, whether all of it is taken up by some suppliers is a question that needs to be asked.
Yeah. Tim Court.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I was just going to agree with Rob and stuff with that. I think it's about tempering the aspirations, certainly in the early days, to make sure it doesn't get overly cluttered. Otherwise, it just won't go anywhere because it'll just be too onerous. And as Rob says, it just keeps the price points low if you're prepared to make compromises in the early days, but make sure that the interface is adaptable and can evolve over time. But try and temper your aspirations at the start, because with the timescales you're looking at, it's going to be difficult to bring something in that's too all-encompassing. That's just my point.
Yeah. No.
Understood, and that point is accepted. No, and I understand that point. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So we're coming towards the end of our time this morning. In terms of the next steps from here, taking what we've done today forward, I'll have a chat with Kemi and Mustafa, and we'll work out what groups, because I think it is what groups we want to set up. There seems to be some appetite. There's quite a lot of you involved, you know, turned up for this. There's a few that have gone, oh yeah, this is interesting for us. So I don't think we're in this is a no-go type scenario. So we'll sit down and we'll work out how we want to structure this going forward, bearing in mind things, you know, that Rob and Tim have said, you know, start simple, build from there. And in terms of timescales and things like that, groups and things like that, I think we'd be looking to set things up and move on to the next sort of stages and things like that in September. You know, the clock is ticking from a Transport for Wales perspective and their needs for procurement and things like that. And so you know, we need to leave it a few weeks because there's quite a lot of people still to have some leave. And you know, so September feels like a sensible time to kick off some of this.
Yeah, I wanted to say thank you very much, actually, because it's been a really rich discussion, and I can understand why Rob and Tim may have seen from all the post-it notes thinking we might want to pick every post-it note up and stick it in our spec. We don't plan to do that, but it's given us lots of food for thought. And I liked your point, Tim, about the fact that it's giving you both ideas for the interface, but also things that may need to end up in the spec for the displays. So I think that's been really useful to us. It also made me wonder whether it was worth ultimately sharing our specs with this group. And that's, of course, subject to our procurement team confirming it's okay. But my view is that it might actually just be worth sharing the specs with the group to get some feedback before we actually go formally to procurement. But like you, Tim, we don't know what the next steps are, but we'll follow up and have the conversation to confirm.
Yeah. So this has been recorded. I'll craft the recording out of it, removing all the dead time and things like that, and we'll circulate that in the next couple of days so that you can remind yourselves or share it with colleagues. I will leave this board open for the rest of the day, so that if there's things that you think about during the rest of the day, you can pop on and you can put your thoughts down, because I'm aware, you know, yes, we've had 2 hours, but this tends to get people thinking, and it's one of the advantages of being able to do it digitally, not least of which there's not a pile of post-it notes on the floor from the first bit that we worked on. So before you go, I would appreciate some feedback. Excellent. Some of you are already putting some stuff in. So what did you find really good and useful? What was not so good or useful, a sort of sad face, and then what are we missing? What do you think should be happening? That will help us work through, make these better, and plan the next sort of steps. So yeah, thank you for joining us this morning, and your excellent involvement. There's been a lot of good stuff from you all. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the day. As I say, I'll leave this open until the end of the day, and then close it down. You'll still be able to go on and see it, but you won't be able to add or change it after that. Thank you for watching this ARTIG webinar. To find out more about ARTIG and our work, then please visit our website at rtig.org.uk. Thank you.